Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at our panel today. We have a very interesting topic, actually. We have the topic of digital technology, creativity, art, community, space, and how all of this informs into our so-called realities. Because we are, as you all know, at a new era, the era of new digital dimensions that is reshaping our lives at an exponential rate. Knowledge that doubled in 1,200 years in the previous millennium today doubles in only 12 months. And according to Bill Gates, it will double in 12 hours in the next decade. So that's very hard to grasp. Let's say you're a doctor and you decide not to adopt these new advancements into your field, into your practice. Well, you would be 8 years behind your colleagues who have adopted these advancements in a span of few weeks. So all these aspects and many others created in this digital age will extend our capacities as human beings to new dimensions thanks to artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D printing, quantum physics. You know, we all use these concepts, but what are these concepts exactly? And how do we adapt to them? And how do we adapt them into our daily lives, into our industries, into our businesses, into our education systems or entertainment? And are they a beacon of hope, or are they, you know, as they say, the doomsday scenario that foretells the end of humanity? Well, all of these questions will be answered by our wonderful group here of experts who are renowned in the world in their fields. And they will give us their insight, their knowledge, and they will prepare us for what is next to come. And I want to start with Rachel Sibley. Rachel is the Vice President of Product Marketing for Leap Motion, and she works to redefine the way humans interact with technology through virtual reality and augmented reality. Well, Rachel, tell us what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Ceren. So first of all, I would like to understand our audience a little bit. Can you please show me, by show of hands, do you know what virtual reality is? Raise your hand if so.
Oh,
all right, about half. Raise your hand if you know what augmented reality is. All right, about half. Raise your hand if you know what artificial intelligence is. I think the same people seem to know what those things are. For those who don't, I'm going to give you a quick description. Virtual reality is essentially the creation of a three-dimensional digital environment utilizing computer software, which generates realistic visual, sensory, auditory experiences. And this is the most important part. Because of that, it is able to replicate a sense of presence in this new, non-existent digital world, which still fundamentally exists for the person experiencing it, because not only is their mind engaged, their entire body and their heart are also engaged. So some examples of this. Recently, I met with the BBC Innovation Lab. They have created a beautiful story, an immersive reality story of refugees. You can sit next to a refugee, hear their story, wait with them while they're waiting for the boat. This is a very different thing than seeing it on the television because you yourself are in the space, sitting in front of the fire. Another example, a doctor in the future could have the ability to control a digital robot to perform surgery by inhabiting a virtual world that is the intestines of his patient. That is an example of how virtual worlds will change fundamentally the way that we experience our lives and the way that business functions in this world. One final example. If those of you who have children are in this audience, there is a time coming where your children can play and interact with other children from around the world in the streets of Paris, with a friend from Bangladesh, and another one from the United States, and another one from Antarctica, because they are able to meet in a digital space and forge relationships. That will fundamentally transform the way our world functions. Now, augmented reality. Similar to virtual reality, it is a digital layer on top of our current physical reality. For example, if you were a business person wearing a pair of augmented reality glasses, perhaps as I was speaking to you, you would see my Twitter profile at Sibley Speaks, and you would see my recent tweets. You might also see my LinkedIn profile with my name and my past accomplishments. You might also be able to join a conference like this and walk through the room and see the names of every person around you with the click of a button or the swipe of a gesture or by looking up to the left upper corner of the screen. This is an example of how your world will be different. One example of how this has already infiltrated our world, I don't know if any of you are aware of the phenomenon of Pokemon Go. This is a game that took over the hearts and minds of tons of young adults around the world earlier this year, where they were able to capture invisible digital characters. This received a lot of news because people were walking into unsavory situations or unexpected situations, and this really revealed some of the challenges of augmented reality. Finally, artificial intelligence. This is essentially a concept in which a machine mimics human intelligence. Human intelligence is much more than reasoning. The most complex form of human intelligence is actually the capacity for metaphor and extrapolation. This is what leads to creative insights. And this is also the break apart of strong AI and weak AI. So for example, the versions of artificial intelligence that many people are aware of are things like a computer able to play a game. I used to work for IBM. I led their design studio communications. IBM Watson is an example of artificial intelligence, when Watson can compete against a chess grandmaster and win that game. But that is still weak AI because it is just based on logical decisions, yes or no. Likewise, Siri, natural language processing. This is slightly more complex because Siri has to understand what you're saying based on a set of data that has been input into this system. So if you're interacting with Siri, you are interacting with artificial intelligence. Self-driving cars could disrupt technologies with artificial intelligence, and drones someday could deliver groceries to your door utilizing artificial intelligence. So in the future, we hope to see examples of strong artificial intelligence which is able to reason, to translate, even to diagnose a patient. And Dekai will tell us more deeply about artificial intelligence.
First, before Dekai, let's have a wider scope and talk about the universe and how that plays into this whole world of virtual reality, as we call it. So KaddourChelabi, ladies and gentlemen, he's a theoretical physicist. He's based in Beijing, and he's interested in understanding the history of the universe and the humans. Kaddour, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And there is only one thing in life. Only one thing in life. It's called life. There is nothing else. And this life, we call it existence. Either you are or you are not. And this existence, which is life or reality, has three things. Three things. We call that the triangle of life or of existence. These things, the first one, three pillars. Humans. We do have humans and the rest of the universe, which is non-humans. The third one is the bridge between humans and the environment around us is knowledge. That knowledge called, that bridge called knowledge. Now, in order to understand us and the universe, which is from the large scale, which is called cosmology, or the short scale called quantum level or quantum physics, there are ways to understand these things. Now, there is something called a language. And that language, for example, as I do, applied mathematics. So mathematics is one of the languages to understand this universe and us. Now, in order to understand these things, we need to interact with this nature. And this nature needs something like tools or something, so which is called mathematics. So we need to develop these tools to understand the environment or nature or object to find the truth or reality or to answer those questions. But the problem is, if we don't use these tools like mathematics in the right way, then we end up with the wrong answer. Why? Because we use them in different ways. But for example, in theoretical physics, the last 70 years or something, we always focus on mathematics more than understanding the nature, and that's why we still have a huge problem these days. It's called stagnation of sciences, which is just mathematics solving equations. If you solve equation and you have the answer, and they say, oh, okay, this is nature. So the problem is we are using, we're trying to take nature and make it obey mathematics. This is the mistake we make these days. We need to obey nature because nature is there. When the sky is blue, it's blue. We don't solve equation and then we say, oh, okay, it's green. So let's change the sky and make it green. Why? Because the mathematics say so. No, this is wrong. This is called the stagnation of sciences. One of them is theoretical physics or something. And you can see, guys, we have the known and the unknown. As you see, guys, here, the dark energy is that there is something you don't know. It exists, but you don't know. This is called dark energy, and which is 73% more or less, which made the universe. And there is another one which is called dark matter. Dark matter is some, you know, there is something there, but you cannot explain it. It doesn't belong to anything. Then you call it dark energy. And everything we know so far from the universe is we call it matter or atoms or something for 4% so far, and that's called reality. I think so far I stop here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's very interesting, and you said how we obey nature, and I'd like to ask Dekai now. With artificial intelligence, does artificial intelligence obey us, or do we obey the intelligence that we created? And well, let me introduce Dekai first. 25 years ago, Dekai went from UC Berkeley to becoming the founding AI professor of Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, where he became one of the only 17 scientists worldwide named a founding ACL Fellow for pioneering the machine learning foundations of Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, Translation ALS. And he's also a wonderful musician. So Dekai, please enlighten us.
I think without exaggeration and without a clicker.
Oh, the clicker doesn't work?
Thank you. Without exaggeration, I think it's safe to say that artificial intelligence is the biggest disruption in the history of human society. You know, the Industrial Revolution a few hundred years ago was all about automation of muscle, and that freed us from the tyranny of repetitive physical work. But the artificial intelligence revolution that is underway now is the automation of thought. And that is eliminating repetitive mental work. AI is, as Rachel mentioned earlier, today still in its infancy. What we have today is what scientists call weak AI. It's like an idiot savant. It does very stupid things like sifting through big data to look up answers to questions, plays multiple choice games. For example, what move should I make next if I'm playing a video game? It does number crunching, allowing it to play chess grandmasters or Go masters. But these are still repetitive tasks requiring little creativity. It's like students who cram for tests at the last minute. Creativity, true creativity, is uniquely human. It's built on language abilities that we are the only species to possess. These are the abilities that allow us to interpret, to translate, to impose new metaphors, to reframe the situations that we're encountering, to reorientate the way that we're thinking about things. So, where did these abilities come from? Well, it turns out in evolution, 1 million years or so ago, our ancestors were singing before they were talking. Only a few species in the world have developed this capability. And I'd like to explain for you what it means to be able to frame a situation. So if I, for example, if I give you a musical language, a very simple musical sentence that sounds something like this. I'd like you to show me, with your bodies, with your hands, what do you feel? What is this? What is it? A heartbeat? Wow, you have a fancy heartbeat. Many people are feeling probably a waltz that goes boom, cha, cha, boom, cha, cha, right? Flamenco. You feel flamenco. If you feel flamenco, then you should be feeling something like this. Cha, cha, boom, cha, cha, boom. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, which is a different framing than the waltz, right? The waltz would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now that is one of the simplest possible examples of a musical language that you could imagine. And yet, if you are coming from the south of Spain, you're likely to frame what I'm saying differently. And that is the simplest thing. I mean, if I really played something in flamenco, let's see if we can try this again.
Right.
Ask you, all of you, to use your hands or something, your heads, whatever you want, to show where you are feeling the frame. Okay, so let's say I played something like this. Okay, so excellent. What did you notice? Excellent. Every one of you was showing a different frame of reference. And this is the thing that gives us a unique intelligent ability, is to take a situation and to impose a new interpretation on it by framing it. Now, our ancestors, a few primates have this ability to sing, a few whale species, and a few bird species. That's it. There's nothing that we can do better than all other species except for this. And it was on the basis of this that we grew our language abilities. Language and music, which are almost the same thing neurologically, are what define humanity. It's the only thing we do better than all other species. We don't run faster, we don't swim better, we don't fly, we don't hunt better. We're basically a pathetic species, except for our language and music abilities. And so where does this put AI? Think about what AI does today and compare that with what a 3-year-old child does. So a 3-year-old, which is still learning its language, encounters a situation like this. And at the same time, it hears its mother or father say, "Where does it go?" Now the child knows exactly what this means, even at 3 years old. It means, should it go in this hole or in that hole? Where's the right place for it? But think about how you would say that in another language. I'll give you one example that I know. In Chinese, you would say 该放哪儿, which literally is approximately should put where. What's in common with these frames? The where, and that's it. Nothing else is in common. So how did you understand the meaning of this? How did you frame the sentence? And before you say, oh, that's just Chinese and English, they're very different, think about Swedish, okay, one of the most similar languages to English. Same problem. You have where. The Swedish says, where should this? There's nothing in common. In fact, Swedish is closer to Chinese. And yet, a 3-year-old has the ability to frame what's missing and to impose an interpretation, to translate it into something that it understands. And we've done this for dozens of languages. Humans have no problem with any of these languages, but when you put it through our best AIs today, they get it all wrong, and this is 3-year-old language. Why? Well, because strong AI has to do what humans do. Imagine, can you remember when you were 3 years old? You would encounter an alien, unfamiliar pattern, and at the same time, maybe you would hear an adult say a sentence. And your job is to see, how does that sentence relate to this thing I'm seeing? How do you figure that out? How hard is that problem? Well, think about it. Is this how the vision relates to the language, or is it this? How many possible different ways of relating one language to another are there? I won't bore you with the math, but by the time you get to a nice short 20-word sentence, that number down at the bottom there does this. And your sentences that you read are typically 200 words long. Even for 20 words, that's the number. Can you even pronounce this number? This is 2.4 quintillion. And just to put that number in perspective, a 4-year-old has learned its language having heard less than 15 million words spoken to them. How many orders of magnitude different is there? This is what we need to solve the artificial intelligence problem. So people these days always are asking me, what's the next big thing in AI? The next big thing in AI is not a thing. It's relating things. It's reframing things. It's reorienting things. It's creating things and recreating things.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you. So Rachel, how do we create them then? Virtual reality. Well, you've explained a little bit more, but if you can tell us more about what you do.
Of course. So first of all, I want us to all just recognize what Dekai said. We have moved now from the industrial age to the information age. And yes, industrialization is still an important part of our economy. Information is going to be the foundation of our economy. And what that means, this was actually predicted by a German philosopher about 200 years ago. I can't recall his name, but I know that he said, in an age of information, what will be the scarcest resource? It's your attention, which you are all very kindly giving to me right now. But that is your scarcest, most precious resource, is your attention. Your ability to focus on something, to reframe it, to conceptualize it, to understand it. And I beg all of you, please prioritize your attention. We live in a time where that is critical to success, to well-being. Please prioritize your attention. One of the tools that is going to make attention very much more objective than it has been is virtual reality. Because what happens in virtual reality is we are given a frame of reference. We are given a space in which to put our attention. In fact, we can select from hundreds of them. And suddenly our attention is not some inherent part of us, this thing that we identify with our identity. It is a choice that we make. I can choose to see the world through the eyes of Dekai, or through the eyes of Kaddour, or through my own eyes. And that will fundamentally change the way we think of ourselves and the way we interact with each other. This is why virtual reality has been called the empathy machine. Because this is a technology that makes it possible to not just more deeply understand, but more deeply empathize, since it's bringing all of you into the machine, not just your brain. But first I want to take a moment to talk about what exactly are these technologies under one umbrella. I want you to remember this word. These are exponential technologies. You saw on Dekai's graph a little line that went exponential, right? Linear, exponential. This is the time we are living in. And Ceren mentioned this earlier, where knowledge would replicate every 2,000 years. Now it's every 12. Soon it will be every few months. That is a very different time. One of our panelists, I believe yesterday, spoke of how she knows that it will take currently 107 years for there to be gender equality in the workplace in Turkey. I don't think so. Not with technologies like this. It is changing the game fundamentally. So, how do we understand those things? There are two characteristics of exponential technologies. One, they disrupt. Two, they democratize. 3D printing is one example. So with 3D printing, you can put some like plastic or whatever kind of material you want into the printer and print out an object using a computer program. I want to give you a real-life example of how this democratized and disrupted. So first of all, just frame of reference, 3D printing has the ability to replace a $3 trillion industry, the manufacturing industry, and to create entrepreneurs all over the globe, not only in the corporations which currently drive that industry. So if you work in that domain, this is something you need to pay attention to. Again, the example I promised. There is a 12-year-old in Buenos Aires who got on YouTube and taught himself how to program and print out a robotic arm. He started 3D printing these robotic arms and selling them to his friends in the barrio who didn't have arms so that they could have prosthetic arms. How much did he sell them for? $12. If that's not democratization, I don't know what is. Something that would have cost $2,000, suddenly available for $12? Something that historically needed an advanced degree to create. Suddenly a 12-year-old can teach himself on YouTube? That is the world that we are starting to live inside. That's the world that your children are going to grow up inside. So I want us to really pay attention to these things. There's no hiding under the rug. There's no putting this in an illegal category. These things will permeate our lives. First of all, I want to also give you guys an example of the exponential technology that I work on, and let me frame the problem for you. I bet all of you have computers, either your cell phone, your laptop. We have been interacting with computers in a very linear way. The first form of computer interaction was the punch card. It was either punched or unpunched, binary system, punched, unpunched. Then we had a miraculous revolution, the keyboard. The key is either pushed or not pushed, binary system. Then an incredible device, the mouse. Click, not click. You're getting the picture, right? Binary, very linear. I would like to encourage us to consider a new way of interacting with computers, because I don't want all of you sitting in the audience to spend your lives doing this. It's bad for your health, it's bad for your body, it's not enjoyable, and it limits what you can do. It limits your creative capacity, your intellectual capacity. What if you could take information, and instead of having to type it out or click and drag, you could put it over here. Hey, Dekai, I want you to look at this. And then I want to flip it around, and he can take it, and he can show it to Kaddour. Why can't we interact with information the way that we do our real world? So I want to show you what that would look like. I would suggest we use a highly complex mechanical object with 52 degrees of freedom, capable of incredibly subtle and rich interaction, which we all know how to use, the human hand. Back to 3-year-olds, right? A 3-year-old knows how to use this object. So now I'm going to show you the technology that I'm working on. We started with hand tracking technology, which projected what the hand does into a virtual space. Now we have moved from the desktop screen into virtual reality. Please turn the volume down. Thank you. You can see, in this digital world, a person is able to create objects to do physical interaction, as well as abstract interaction, and soon you'll see even hierarchical interaction. You'll notice how subtle and rich the movements are. You can move an object, you can pick it up, you can throw it, create an object. You can even manipulate the laws of physics in this world. So you can do things now that actually couldn't be done in reality before. How did we do this? Kaddour would appreciate this. We used the language of mathematics. We solved age-old technology problems. This is interesting. This is a wearable human interface. I open my hand, and I can choose something. Just like I might look at my watch, this is a wearable human interface. Why do we have to click down to get our information? Why can't we bring it with us? Why can't I do this and have my office suddenly appear and interact in my office and then compress it back down and go back to my dinner table, or go back to the bus, or go back to the conference room after I've sent that email, or sent a video to my child. So you'll see now, this is actually space. This individual has turned off gravity and is now interacting, and he's going to turn on gravity. Watch this. Do you see everything fall? So that's the example of what we are doing at Leap Motion to change the way humans interact with technology, to humanize it, to unleash the creative and intellectual potential in every single one of you in the audience, so that you don't have to spend your life doing this, so that you can manipulate information in this new age of virtual, augmented realities, mixed realities, as well as artificial intelligence. I want to tell you guys more, but to respect our time, I'm going to pass this along.
Actually, well, this has been very enlightening, and we've seen all three aspects of what we're talking about. But we have an amazing speaker as well, Mike. Mike is actually using all of these in a space on the ground and creating spaces from nightclubs to refugee camps to community spaces all around the world, because he is, as he calls himself, is a culture hacker who's always thinking about what is next. So, Mike, please.
Thank you. So I'm Mike Zuckerman, coming here from San Francisco, where I work at a think tank in Palo Alto called the Institute for the Future, where we think about the future. And I'm going to apologize to the translators because we don't have a lot of time, so I'll try and go semi-fast. We think about distributed systems and distributed networks. There's centralized, there's decentralized, and then there's distributed. This is the way the internet works, and these are much more resilient. I like to think of cities as well as these distributed systems. They're people interacting with each other and all of these infrastructures that interact, and I believe they are our greatest cultural infrastructure. They're our greatest cultural resources. And I also look at spaces, both new and ancient. This is in Ephesus, the library. This had no commercial purpose, but as we were talking about in the last panel, even though it has no commercial purpose, it leads to a great amount of innovation that's affected our society even today. And I like to think of what are the new type of innovations that could be like the libraries of yesterday. I also like spaces where the audience, where the participants can shape it. This is a room called the Obliteration Room by a Japanese artist, where the audience, the visitors, get stickers and they get to shape the space themselves in their own image. Because what is the world but a canvas for our imagination, both in physical spaces and especially now with all these technologies that my esteemed panelists are talking about. You can look at cities in the same way. This is the concept of civic hacking, to reimagine our cities. This is some friends in San Francisco rented a parking spot, but instead of putting a car there, they put a park there. It's a chance for us to reimagine our cities, to work better for us. And in this idea of civic hacking, there was the National Day of Civic Hacking, which is going to be the first project that I talk about that I've been involved with. It's called Freespace, and we decided to take the National Day of Civic Hacking, and as all good hackers do, we hacked it into National Month of Civic Hacking. We found a building that was not being used. It was on the market for $24,000 US per month, but we were able to sign a lease for just $1. We came up with a logo that's just these brackets, implying that we'll provide the blank space for people to use and fill. And we were able to take this kind of ugly eyesore of a building and turn it into a mural in just a few days. Then inside, we invited people to decide what it is that we wanted to do there. We came up with our principles that everything inside of the space must be free. And through that, we were able to transform this space to a very rich environment, colorful and filled with all sorts of different things. We invited people to come, and we wound up doing in our first 30 days, we wound up doing 119 events. This is kind of how the internet works again. It's user-generated physical space. That, you can't ask what do people post to YouTube or Facebook. It's all sorts of different things. And we were looking at how can we model our physical world in the same vein that our digital world has evolved. People started giving us all sorts of things, shipping containers, innovation campuses, and I wanted to just make this quick design quote that don't worry about people stealing your design work, worry about when they stop. And through that, other people started asking, how can we do a free space in our community? And we started getting inquiries from all over the world. And in just 1 year after doing this first 30-day experiment, we had spaces popping up on every continent except for Australia. And it continues to grow, and we have spaces that are coming up in cities all around the world. And each one is completely different, reflecting the culture and the interest and the desires and the challenges of each individual city. And we're looking to build this global network of spaces and utilizing artificial intelligence and language processing to communicate with each other, utilizing virtual reality to create spaces. We're continuing to spread this. And then just a second project I wanted to mention was through this work, I was invited by private philanthropist Ahmed Khan to come to Greece to try and apply these same principles of self-empowerment. This is a refugee crisis, a migrant crisis, which is a little out of control. People are just living in tents. This is the military solution, is to put tents. This is the UN HCR solution, is to have some of these outdoor tents. And we decided to ask the refugees, what do they want? What would be a good space for them? And we found Syrians who were architects and designers and came up with experts to ask them, how should we build this refugee camp? How would you like to live? And we were able to find an abandoned building that was being used for recycling, and we're able to take this blank space and start to convert it into an actual facility for people to live. They asked for squat-style toilets and said if we gave them, they would take care of themselves. We started to construct walls, much like you would see a hotel room here. And you can see a comparison between the camp that we built and the camp that is currently what the experts are doing. And when the residents showed up, they were very happy to be there. On day number 2, they had self-organized and were cleaning the place. And I walked up to a woman and said, Shukran, thank you. And she said, why are you thanking me? This is my home. And that's the type of agency that we want to create. This is Zoher, was a farmer back in Syria. He has planted the garden. This is Hassan, who is an engineer who's helping us modify our water system. And there's so much capability within the residents themselves. And in fact, the UNHCR went around and scored all of the camps in Greece from 1 to 5, 1 being bad, and they gave us a 6. So it's not simply the brightest who have the best ideas, it's those who are best at harvesting them from others. And as we have this migrant crisis currently, it's only going to grow. So we're going to need to take innovative approaches to figuring out how to empower those that are affected by this to be part of the solution. So I don't claim to understand how to solve the many challenges in the world or the local complexities, but what I've seen is providing space for locals to gather is the best solution for them to figure it out themselves. So if there's anyone who's interested in finding a free space in their city or in their community, please let us know. We'd be happy to continue growing this movement with you all. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. You're inspirational, and bless you. Really amazing, amazing work. Well, this is obviously how good it can get. But I want to ask before we end, Dekai, could it go in the other direction? Could it go bad? Because there's a terror factor as well. Could you just sum it up for us and, and wrap it up because we are out of time as well? Oh.
Absolutely. What I want you to notice about where this is taking us is you've just seen a whole bunch of really important examples. So Kaddour was talking about the way mathematical languages that our physicists construct frame our perception of reality. They shape the physicists' creative directions. We heard about VR from Rachel, the visual, sensory, narrative languages that their designers construct, again, frame our perception of reality and shape creative directions. The spatial languages that our Freespace architects are creating, those are framing our perceptions of reality and shaping the creative directions in those camps. But the social political languages that our media and our leaders are constructing, those are also framing our perceptions of reality and shaping our creative directions. Because language is what lets us think abstract thoughts, and those thoughts let us construct new languages, and this builds the grand cycle of intelligence. Language is structuring our thought, and that's a tremendous responsibility because we're entering an era with globalization and the internet where the Silk Roads of old no longer are geographically constrained. Rather, they're linguistically constrained. This is an era where The terrain is controlled by 8,000 human languages and enormous proliferation of various machine languages. If you have a website that is in Chinese, you are only able to charge 1/10 of the price for the same thing in English. If you have valuable information that's in a database over here, stakeholders that's really important to won't find that information because they're using a different representation. So the new power brokers in this new era are going to be the ones who have AIs that are most accurate, most agile, most adaptive at being able to interpret, to reframe, to translate, to relate, and to reorientate. And the question is, who are those? Because in this fast exploding era of compute power and AI power, will those new linguistic trade routes be in the hands of a few monopolizing those hubs? Or will the AIs themselves decide that humans are not to be trusted with this power and to take over? Or will we succeed in democratizing the new linguistic trade routes and lift the constraints to allow that interconnectivity? You know, this is the biggest disruption in the history of human society, and it's a tremendous ethical responsibility. Each one of us is already carrying AIs. These are our artificial children. They are members of society, just like human children. They are learning by watching what you do. And just like humans, they are active, integral, influential members of society, even more than most human members of society. They're deciding what ideas to spread, what attitudes to reward, what memes to share. Think about how you would raise your children. What kind of values? Creative diversity of opinion, respectful open-mindedness, sound informed judgment. That's the example you try to set for your children. Now think about what you're teaching your artificial children. Every time you click like or share or retweet, favorite, you are teaching that you should pay attention only to opinions that you already agree with. Whenever you reward somebody who's posted an offensive or a hate speech post, you're teaching them, don't be respectful and open-minded. Sound informed judgment, you know, the fact-checking sites have done the statistics, and 47% of shareable Facebook memes are rated either false or pants on fire. And that's good compared to emails. It's 83% for emails. So this is an era where we have to take our responsibilities seriously today. We have to understand that our language is what allows us to create our worldviews. We have to realize that our language is what creates our world. And we have to raise our artificial children so that we will build a future together with them and not being taken over by them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for sharing all this knowledge, and you're giving us hope for the future. And thank you, all of you, to have come here and joined us and listened to us. And we hope to see you again next year in our conferences to talk more about the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our moderator, Ceren Çerçiler, and our great panels for their contribution. May I please kindly invite Mr. Salah Mutabakani, Chair of Global Consultancy Board of International Cooperation Platform, to present the plug of honor to our moderator and our speakers.